What's up guys, YST here and welcome back to another Raid Shadow Legends video. I hope everyone's having an amazing day. Today we're going to be focusing on my top 30 epic champions to take on the clan boss in 2023. Whether you're early game, mid game or the end game, we're going to be speaking about their overall utility and the teams that I feel they kind of complement the most. Like as you see here in my clan at the moment, we've got epic champions all around the board and they're definitely fulfilling some very important roles for these styles of compositions. And we're going to be speaking about ally protectors, increased defense options, decreased attack, you name it. A bunch of these will be on the list today. Well, I actually said my top 30, but take that with a pinch of salt. It's more like 35 in total because we will be mentioning some of the unkillable options towards the end. But I really want to focus on the non-unkillable first because not everybody can replicate those kind of teams, right? And the ways that they fit into those comps. Also, before we get into this as well, let me know whereabouts in the Demon Lord that you guys are currently sitting. Are you just new to the game and doing the normal and the easy, right? Or are you going into like the hard, the brutals, or more of like a late game player taking down like the Nightmare or the Ultra Nightmare? And also the teams that you're currently using and the kind of compositions you're trying to blend together. I'm always interested in that kind of stuff, what kind of teams you guys are using and things. So there's only one way we could start this video, and it's going to be from the Shadowkin, of course. You know, we love the Shadowkin around here. Toragi the Frog. Now, Toragi the Frog is a phenomenal champion, guys. If you build him, invest in him, he's definitely going to blow your mind in the ways that he can fulfill so many roles. Now, what it comes down to is the Bog Blessing, where he places a shield buff equal to 15% of this champion's max HP, and a 50% ally protection buff on all allies except this champion for 2 turns, and will also heal this champion by 25% of their max HP, and this will increase according to the amount of poisons that's on an enemy. Now, we love to have poisons on the clan boss, right? It's one of the best forms of dealing that damage. So being able to have an extra increase of heals by simply having something you want anyway active is actually a very cool thing. And having a shielded ally protection in one skill opens the opportunity for so many teams. Maybe pairing with an Underpriest Brogni, right? And you can extend the value of your shield with an Underpriest. Turns out to be really cool. If you do want to use him elsewhere, he has an AoE provoke. Could be nice for like faction wars or secret rooms. But he also has a great chance of placing a decreased attack on his default skill. To mitigate damage, of course. And then when he's attacked, has a 50% chance of placing a 5% poison on the attacker for 2 turns and occurs once per hit. So when we think about Affinity Clan Boss now, you're going to see a better value coming out from this passive because you're getting hit multiple times, not just the one time against the Void Affinity, right? So overall, makes the list phenomenal champion. Next one, we're going to be going into the Dwarfs. Can any of you guys guess it before we click this champion? It's Kaelia. No, I'm joking. I wish it was. It's going to be Geomancer. Now, I'm going to try my best not to spend too much time on these champs because we do have a lot to get through. And, you know, I value your guys' time as well. The Quicksand Grasp fully depletes a turn meter, great for other areas, but we're focusing on the HP burn and the weaken debuffs. As this coincides with a passive with the Stone Guard, which will decrease the damage all allies receive by 15%, which is astronomical in the grand scheme of things. And for anyone that stayed tuned on the clan boss draft that we did with the content creators, this is kind of how I was lasting a very long time because it's very valuable to have 15% reduction by simply having a burn placed by this champion. If there are multiple champions on the team, of course only one will activate, but he also reflects a bunch of damage back to the clan boss. So if you're looking for a way of passive damage and damage mitigation, look no further than Geomancer. And he's also got a way to like remove the increased attack from Affinity Clan Boss, which can kind of alleviate the big smacks that you may be seeing. Next up is in the Barbarians. He's got a big belly button, he's Spirit Affinity, and he goes by the name of Fahrakin The Fat. Now, for me personally, I think I see him as kind of legendary-esque, like the way that he can implement this ally attack to team up with all allies except himself to attack an enemy, whilst also placing an increased crit rate and an increased crit damage buff. It's just a phenomenal synergy, right? So whenever I'm trying to build budget compositions, first to mind is Fahrakin The Fat for me. He also implements burns, 2 5% poison debuffs, a decreased defense, and also a deflection of damage on himself and spreading it across all allies equally, kind of puts him in a good situation to stay alive. Although that you have to kind of factor in, the rest of your allies will be taking a bit more of a smack, but because it's spread equally, it's not that intensive in terms of the damage that is spread. But even using him in a double ally attack team, unkillable team, counter-attack composition, you name it, he fits into those comps and he definitely will make your team better for you. Going into the dwarfs, we have also got Morag Bronzelock, who I wasn't aware of until the clan boss draft once again, where Hell Hades came through with this champion. I believe that Ash was the one that initially recommended this option. And it all comes to fruition with, once again, ally attack feature, pretty nice, 2 random skills. I'm going to do some good damage over the course of a battle. But she stands as the only epic champion in the game that can place the big strengthen on all allies on a 2-turn, on a 3-turn cooldown, lasting for 2 turns. Now, strengthen is one of the best damage mitigations in Raid, and is why champions such as Mithrala Lifebane are used in so many compositions as well. It's very valuable, mitigates all of that damage for your team, and is very easy to tune on this 3-turn cooldown. She also deals some good damage herself, and if counterattacks when hit while under a strengthen buff placed by this champion as well, she's got a way to counterattack herself. So if you're looking for a way to survive longer, Morag, go and join the teams out there. Heading into the Lizardman faction, we've also got a Venomage. Now, Venomage is for a very similar reason to the Geomancer, like we mentioned prior. Comes down to, like, traditionally, heal reduction, we don't have a care in the world for this, right? Against the Demon Lord. It's just useless. But she actually swoops in and is like, hold up a second. You're going to get some value from this now, because you'll receive 15% or less damage from enemies under the heal reduction. And that's actually pretty astronomical, right? Like we mentioned before. But on top of that, has a chance of placing 2 5% poisons. She's got a decreased attack, a decreased defense, and also a poison detonation on the A1. Like, overall, simple but effective kit is actually a very cool one that I'm looking for as well when mentioning these budget options. Next up, talking about the counterattacks, like we mentioned with the Morag Bronzelock with her unique passive. We've got the only AoE counterattack champion in the game, going by the name of Skullcrusher. Now, Skullcrusher is a phenomenal champion. Like, there's not really much more to his kit apart from ally protection and a counterattack, whilst also placing an unkillable on himself. But he can make his way into so many teams, right? Like, that counterattack is, in essence, going to double your damage over the course of a battle. And also the ally protection is going to eat up all of that damage. And whilst under unkillable, he's kind of not in a bad situation himself. So if you're looking for counterattack, you don't have those legendary options, definitely look no further than Skullcrusher. And also has a way of decreasing the duration of debuffs on this champion by 1 turn at the start of each turn. And I believe that there's some quirky budget unkillable teams where you can kind of use him as the stun target in a way. He's got the unkillable on and he kind of decreases the duration himself. So definitely some cool teams out there to implement Skullcrusher. Next up, we're going back into the Shadowkin, where I feel like home. We've got Hotatsu, a champion that I used in the Clan Boss draft. We're going to be mentioning that a lot today. And I feel like that's very important because when we was choosing these champions, and we had to have like the epics, right? Like, we was looking for these options. These are the ones that really stood out to us and choices that we kind of considered to get the most optimal damage. Now, basically what he comes down to is amazing cooldowns. 3 turn on all skills, but he likes to read, granted. Increased defense, continuous heal, pretty nice, right? Also, AoE chance of decreased attack, so you can kind of pair him with some other options to kind of go back and forth to keep that up consistently. But he's also got a Leech A1. Now, I'll tell you what, guys, it is very rare to find a champion in this game, legendary or epic, by the way, that can fulfill increased defense, healing, decreased attack, and a Leech all in one skill, coinciding with a defensive aura by 25%. So he fulfills so many roles. I would say he's a lot better in 2-to-1 compositions or counterattack due to the low chances of the Leech debuff, which is pretty decent as well. But allowing to heal you by 18% of the damage inflicted allows you to move away from those lifesteal gears and really start to heal by simply dealing your War Master or raw damage. So, very phenomenal champion. Also has a way of removing random debuffs from himself. But unfortunately, he will also do this. He basically prioritizes what's up at the moment. Like, it will go for the stun if only the stun is active. But if you had a tick of poison beforehand from like the Void Clan boss, he's actually going to cleanse that first, and then it falls out of sync, so you might have to pair this with some form of block debuffs to make it viable. So, Hotatsu, 100% on this list for my top 30 epics in the game for Clan Boss. Next up is going to kind of be like a trio. You can kind of look at this as one choice, but it's going to be debuff extenders, or buff extenders, should I say. I'm kicking off with Sandlash Survivor from the Orcs. It was kind of like the OG one, I would say. I remember my first ever Clan Boss video consisted of Sandlash Survivor. Now, it comes down to this amazing passive with the Born Survivor where she can place an ally protection buff on all allies for 2 turns when any champion's allies' HP drops below 50%, and will also place a block damage buff on this champion for 1 turn. Now, I'm pretty sure that many of you guys that's kind of climbing throughout the clan boss and you take a big smack, you take a critical hit or whatever that may be, and you're just like, if only something could save me here because my champion was literally on the brink of staying alive. Well, she's going to come through on a 4-turn cooldown, and when you're taking those bad smacks from the clan boss, ally protection eats it up, places a block damage, she's not going to be mitigated. It's a very phenomenal skill to bring in. But one of the highlights is also attacks all enemies, decreases the duration of all enemy buffs, but most importantly, increases the duration of all ally buffs by 1 turn. So whether you're trying to increase your increased speed, your block debuffs, your increased defense, like whichever composition that you're using, if you require a buff extender, Sunlash Survivor, phenomenal option. Also a defense in all battles by 25%, so works as the great aura champion for your team. So for a very similar reason to the Sunlash Survivor, we've got Godseeker Iniri, who's one of my favorite epic champions in the game, and it all comes down to this Quest for Meaning where she can do a very similar effect to the Sunlash Survivor, but she also heals all allies by 15% of their max HP, followed by the buff durations getting increased, right? But she also has some really quirky revives which you can utilize in so many areas in Raid. But even if you're progressing, might not have the most optimal speed tune going, like if one of your champions dies, she can bring them back, reset their cooldowns, and put you in a good situation to half get back into the fight and potentially pop out a few extra million damage, which is actually very impactful. But for a very similar reason, we've got Anchorite that does it with removing a random debuff from all allies, then increasing the duration. Now, what's really cool about him is I'm trying to think of an example for you guys. I would say something like, let's just say you want to cleanse AoE 2, decrease speed, decrease attack, whatever that may be from the Affinity clan bosses, and then also extend your buff durations in the correct speed tune, and maybe have someone like Grizzled Jarl to kind of tank up the stun for you with the block debuffs, right, with a 1-turn duration. Like, there's many ways you could utilize this, maybe taking off the stun debuff, you can use it for that as well. So, has a lot of quirky ways to use him, and one of my favorite parts being, is actually a very underrated heal ability, because he fully heals a target ally, fully heals, not a percentage chance, just outright heals them up, and then places a 30% increased crit rate and crit damage on all allies for 2 turns. So amplifying damage, healing the most mitigated target, wherever you'll be your stun target, and then also heals a little bit on the A1 as well. So, huge fan, huge advocate for Mr. Anchorite. And he looks pretty cool as well, right? I feel like people sleep on him a little too much nowadays. Next up, we're heading into the Undead Hordes. You know, spooky round here. We've got Halloween soon. Let me just have a sip of my water, guys. Forgive me. Stay hydrated, guys. Stay hydrated. We got Seeker. Now, Seeker is... he enables so many teams. Like, I'm currently using him in my team as well for the Terminator boost for my Demiffer style composition paired with, like, Ares, right? Really, he's got a very unique kit in the ways that he fills the tummies of all allies by 30%, then will place an increased attack as well to amplify your damage, followed by an extra turn on a 3-turn cooldown, and leads him with his A1 and deals a good amount of damage. Also a really cool passive as well where he can heal himself, place an increased defense on allies who are hit with a critical hit. But the main thing that you're wanting for is the Terminator boost. I'm pretty sure many of you guys are aware of this and enables a bunch of teams throughout this game. Next up, we're going to have Occult Brawler. One that I've not actually spoken about on the channel for a pretty long time. From the Ogren tribes, I believe. And alright, hear this out, guys. If you are looking for nothing else but a poisoner, right? Occult Brawler. That's all you can say. Like, he's got the same belly button as Fahrakin The Fat. He's got poisons everywhere. Like, with the Ruination Ritual, has a 70% chance of placing a 5% poison debuff on a random enemy for 4 turns, by the way, at the start of each turn on a 0-turn cooldown. So every single time he takes a turn, the poisons are going up for a very long duration, and it's just going to be phenomenal over the course of a battle, primarily for, like, you know, compositions when you're grinding or unkillable. Really good. Also, another chance for poison here, and then an essay here that you guys can read in your own time, but it's basically does different mechanics depending on how many poisons that you basically stripped off. But I believe you have to be wary of if this champion is under 5 or more debuffs, will grant an extra turn. So what I primarily like to do is lock this off, but I don't think you can ever have that many debuffs in the clan boss anyway, so kind of waste of space. Trying to see if there's any other thing here. It's always critical. Yeah, I think it's just that final one you have to be wary of in some content. But apart from that, I usually just lock it off, do the poisons, and, you know, get on your bike and cycle on to victory. Next up, we got, is it Undead Hordes? Yes, Undead Hordes, Vogoth. Now, we all know him for Bomb with a Dreadhorn. Phenomenal strategies, right? But only heals by 25% of the damage received from boss attacks, and this champion will only receive half of the heal that all other allies receive, and that will happen every single time that this champion is attacked. So over the course of the battle, healing your team, right? Really cool. Also, places a leash just upon being hit, like being able to heal by 18% of the damage inflicted, pretty much all of the time because it's a 2-turn duration. This is pretty much going to be up for the entirety of a battle. So one of the best leech options in the game, and also has a chance of extending debuffs as well for random ones on a target. So overall, actually a very underrated option, for the clan boss. It said choption there. Was it option, choption? I don't know what I'm saying nowadays. Next up, we got the dwarves. We got Rearguard Sergeant. Now, Rearguard Sergeant is somebody that I used in the clan boss draft, right? And it was out of choice once again, and pairs very well with Hotatsu. I would say that them two is like one of the best synergies in the game for the Demon Lord, right? Because she's got a pretty good chance to decrease defense A1. We got an AoE decrease attack, which heals this champion as well, which is pretty nice. But most importantly, an ally protection and a continuous heal on a 3-turn cooldown. So if you're looking for an ally protector, you're looking for a healer, you want decreased attack, and you want decreased defense, look no further than Rearguard Sergeant, because she really does come through and provide all of this for your teams. Now, I will say that it's worth using her in maybe 2-for-1, counter-attack, ally attack teams, because the decreased defense is not enough to bank on if you're cycling skills on a 1-to-1 ratio speed tune. Because if it misses, you're waiting like 3 turns again to have another shot at placing this. Very similar to the Fahrakin the Fat effect, sorry. So definitely pay note to that. Depending on the speed tune you're going and all of that good stuff will determine the true values. But even if you've got someone else to fulfill this role for you and simply using it for these 2 skills alone, you're definitely going to see the impact for your accounts. Next up, we got Jareg. I believe that I've got him on the thumbnail today. You know, I miss Jareg, one of my favorite champions from back in the day, actually. And what it comes down to is a simple but effective kit. But not only that, guys, he doesn't take a crazy amount of books, right? Like, let's just say you've got another decreased attack option and you get 1 book in here. You might be able to save some books here in the meantime. But of course, if you're banking on both of them for the synergy, you might want to consider booking this up, of course. So decreased attack A1, really nice. But also an ally protection and an increased defense in the same skill on a 4-turn cooldown. Now, although there is a 4-turn cooldown, you can speed this at a 4-to-3 ratio. He's going to be completely fine in doing so to get the full bases, maybe paired with like a buff extender as well, like those Godzika and Neris, to play a role in those teams, but can be used without that. So a very good champion, and also as a continuous heal when champions lose 20% of their max HP in 1 hit. So you're taking a bit of a smack. Heals up your allies as well. Going to play a very simple but effective role for your teams. So before I don't remember this next champion, it's going to be Aox the Rememberer, no pun intended. And what he comes in to do is a decreased attack. Also a decreased crit rate, but the target has to have like 50% or more turn meter after turn meter decrease. So you cannot actually use that part of his skill against the Demon Lord. But very similar to champions such as Steel Skull, we've got a very low chance to place a 5% poison debuff on a target, but it's an each hit placement, so in those counterattack teams, you should have no problem in seeing some over the course of a battle. I mean, also heals all allies by 10%, but an extra 2.5% for each debuff on the target. So in a hypothetical scenario, you've got 10 debuffs on the clan boss. That's a 25% heal, guys. 25%. So if you think of it like that, you can imagine the pure impact that this extra heal could have on the targets, right? Increase the duration of 2 random debuffs on the attacker by 1 turn when attacked. Occurs once per hit. Kind of like the epic variation of a bulwark in a sense, or a mini vizier, in the ways that this can be utilized to extend those debuffs. But yeah, it is a random debuff, you know. It's not like the most optimal like an all debuffs, but you know, some decreased attacks might be falling off for you, or a decreased defense or a weaken, and it might just be that kind of extra thing that you need to keep those up, right? So really, really good champion. I'm a big fan. All right, so next up we got Fayne, the Pain. Definitely not lame. Where is she? There she is. So Fayne is a champion that I slept on for a long time, if I'm honest, guys. And I think it came down to the simple reason being that I didn't need her in the compositions that I was utilizing. But the value is just next to none. Like, she's phenomenal. We got poisons, we got decreased attack, we got drop defense, and we got weaken, and also just some good damage coming out from around the board. So whether that be unkillable, progression, like I keep banging on about, she's going to be able to fit into these teams and fulfill so many key roles coming out from one champion for you guys. And what else is really cool is the duration is for 3 turns. Maybe with Master Hexer, you're looking at 4 turns if that procs, right? So it's actually a very good one considering those durations as well. And they're both 100% chances. For some reason, I thought it was like a 90... Is it like 90%? Okay, so it is 100%. And it attacks 3 times. Definitely one that I've been underrating a lot, if I'm honest. The only downside is she's a little bit squishy. 727 defense, you know. But paired amongst the right synergies, she should have no problem staying alive, right? I mean, those compositions. Or even like, I'd say most popular would be like Unkillable, right? But you guys let me know, if you use Fayne, what kind of teams do you use her in? Next up, shout out to my buddy Saf. Oof, I clicked on the wrong faction. You'll be having words with me tonight. Whisper. Now, Whisper is like, it's really hard because she is one of the best clan bots DPS for epics in the game, bar none, phenomenal. But you have to factor in that she's got so many different extra turn mechanics. Like, she's got for targets under decreased defense or weaken, she grants an extra turn, which you most likely will have against the Demon Lord, right? Increased attack as well, and also has a chance of placing a weaken of her own on the A1, so you can coincide with someone else that does a drop defense, right? And has a 10% chance of granting an extra turn whenever this champion lands a critical hit, and increases the damage by 20% against bosses, which is also worth noting here. So if you've got a composition such as like maybe some of those bat eaters where some of your champions can be built in relentless, for example, right? Or you don't mind not having extra turns because the unkillable's going up on time, or like the block damage or whatever that may be. She's going to be very good for those teams, right? She's going to come in, deal optimal damage for an epic. It's going to be great. But you do have to be wary of those traditional style teams where you're banking on increased defense and increased attack and block debuffs, because she's going to be outrunning these buffs, guys, okay? So I would say more of an unkillable style composition. Whisper definitely fits into those specific niche teams that allow you to take extra turns in particular. Next up, we got Dark Hill. This is why I was clicking on the Dark Elves earlier. He's one you can acquire from the normal Doom Tower, from the secret rooms, via the fragments. And basically, he can place a poison and a poison sensitivity with the same ability, which is actually very substantial. Also has a chance of extending with each critical hit, increase the duration of all debuffs on the target by 1 turn, whilst also placing a decreased attack. Now, damage mitigation, increase in durations, 3 poison debuffs, a poison sensitivity, a way of activating burns and poisons, and also decreases the crit rate of enemies with 2 or more debuffs by up to 15%. Now, obviously, if you want to alleviate that crit rate that the boss is doing to you from the Demon Lord, this is going to be a phenomenal passive skill, right? So, overall, one of my favorite epics that you can get from the normal Doom Tower. Next up here, we got Liburga. You know, I actually kind of want a burger. Should I go buy a burger, guys? Where is Liburga? Jakarta. No, it's not that one. Although she can... Do you know what? She wasn't on my official list, but while we're here, she's got a very unique way of kind of turning all of your champions into poisoners in a sense. Granted that you've got Hex on the target, and she also has like a poison sensitivity and a chance of increasing poisons as well. So she is a very good one that you can obtain. A very unique one, I'd say, with the way that she can implement poisons. I'm still trying to look for Liburga, guys. I'm looking. Is she an orc? I believe she's an orc. There she is. Now, one downside about Liburga is you get her so late into the normal Doom Tower, does it sanction bringing her into the squads, apart from like the fun factor of trying out a new champion, right? Which we all love to do in this game. But she's got poison A1s, poisons and poison sensitivity on the A2, increased defense and increased attack on all allies on a 4-turn cooldown, and also has a 50% chance of increasing durations of poisons when she's attacked. If you're talking about like a poison queen, Liburga actually fits into these teams and does a bunch of damage for your compositions. So definitely want to invest in, guys, if you're looking for a quirky new poisoner. Granted that you don't have other ones already and you don't want to spend resources, which is understandable. But if you don't have any better options, she could be one for you, right? Ruella is next on the list from the Sylvan Watchers, and it all comes down to this A2, right, with the no respite, because each has a 50% chance of placing a 60% decreased defense, and a 25% weaken, and a decreased speed, which of course is just basically useless against the Demon or Clan boss. But just focusing on a 4-turn cooldown, drop defense, and weaken, guys, It's phenomenal, right? That's the two debuffs that we're wanting the most. It's why we use champions such as Razin Scarhide. So if by some reason you don't have a Razin or someone that can fulfill these roles for you, it's a no-brainer but to bring Ruella into the composition. Now, she does have a way of like increasing turn meters by 20% and an increased crit rate on all allies on a 3-turn cooldown, which can be speed tuned, but it really depends on the player, right? If you're really understandable about speed tunes, you can implement her into your team, no problem. But for players that are basically, you're like, ooh, I don't really want to speed tune this, I'm going 1-to-1 ratio at the moment and progressing, you could simply lock this up with presets and just rely, guys, on the drop defense and weaken to deal some damage for you. So very versatile in the ways you can use it for clan boss from early game all the way up until the end game, depending on the teams that you are using, right? But let me know, guys, as well. Like, I know I keep saying let me know, but I'm very anxious to know what kind of compositions you're utilizing Ruella in. Like, I've personally not done it myself, although I'm trying on the free-to-play at the moment, but I'm definitely seeing the impacts already from what she can provide. So heading into the Bannerlords next, this champion I was kind of anxious to put on the list, but then I was thinking, right, if you're progressing in this game, you might have just come into the game, right, with that new promo code with the JT skin to get the new Gilded Glider, right? I believe that it was free for new players with a promo code to obtain a Stag Knight. This is why I put him in the list. Now, for the simple reason being, on a 3-turn cooldown, he does place 2 fundamental debuffs for your team. Damage mitigation from decreased attack, then also amplified of damage with decreased defense, right? And that just may all you need when you're trying to factor in the Demon or Clan boss. Also has a way of increasing accuracy on allies who get resisted by an enemy. So if you can't reach the accuracy thresholds yet, he's going to be able to swoop in and allow your champions on the next turn to potentially place the debuffs that got resisted on the previous turn. So I feel like he's a very, very good progression champion for the Demon for sure, hands down. I believe from the same faction, we've got Giscard The Sigiled. I'm not going to say the Sigiled. I know some people were bashing me last time. I don't know why I said that. I kind of knew it was Sigiled. Then, you know, I hear too many mispronunciations and it just bounces around my head sometimes. But basically what it comes down to is increased defense, increased attack, 3-turn cooldown, phenomenal, right? Bunch of champions have these kind of roles. A provoke, we're not really banking on this, right? Against the Demon Lord. I wish we could provoke him. That'd be pretty cool. We got taunts, in a sense, for stun. But yeah, back on track. Also places a shield buff on this champion equal to 25% of their max HP. So, you know, could protect him a little bit throughout the course of the battle. Or you can just lock it off to make full use of this decreased attack coming out from the default skill. Now, increased attack, increased defense, decreased attack, very good. But one thing I would say you have to be wary about is when you're facing the affinity clan bosses, Force, Spirit, Magic Affinity. You will fit this champion by 15% turn meter whenever they are attacked by an enemy under a provoke or an increased attack buff. Now, against the affinity, I'm pretty sure that many of you guys are aware the boss will be getting an increased attack, therefore, he will be getting a turn meter increase. So if you're running him in a team without a block buffs, and you've got a very specific speed tune, I would say just be wary of this passive because it could be the reason why it's falling out of sync for you. But outside of that, very phenomenal champion for progression. I really like him. Next up, Driad Nia. It's a very risky one, right? Like, Driad Nia, I was so excited for Demon Lord, right? But it just turns out that the way that she utilizes the Righteous Revival is very hit and miss, depending on who is the most mitigated over the course of a battle on full auto. But she basically removes all debuffs from a target ally, then heals them by 40% of their max HP. If the target of this skill is not a champion, decreases the cooldown of those skills by 2 turns. So it is a very good skill, but I'd say the main reason why she made the list is she's got a 3-turn cooldown, ally protection, and a strengthen in the same skill. And I think that's very valuable, guys. And also, whenever this champion is healed, heals all allies except this champion by 20% of that heal. So if you just look at it simply, even without this skill here, right, with the quirky ways that it's very good for Hydra, by the way. Like, you can literally just have ally protection and strengthen coinciding with this passive, and she's going to pretty much carry you pretty well over the course of a battle. So, yeah, for that reason alone, I think I had to keep her on the list for today's video. Swiftly moving back into the Shadowkin faction, we've got Suiren, who I've actually got a video on, guys, if you want to go and check it out. She really did blow me away in the ways that she could be utilized in some of these teams. And she looks amazing. Look at that mask, man. Love it. So she has the Confusion Reigns. Attacks all enemies, chance of placing a decreased defense. On the A2, attacks one enemy 2 times, has a chance of placing Weaken. On the A1, attacks one enemy 2 times and each has a chance of placing poisons. So she's placing poison debuffs, drop defense, and weaken. 3 things that we're looking for the Demon Lord for one epic champion, guys. Now, I will say that because of the cooldowns, we got a 3-turn and also a 3-turn once again. You know, it's for 2-turn durations. You're going to need Master Hexer guys or like a debuff extender, right? In order to make this a super viable if you want to keep up consistently. But, you know, it's still a very good option. And I like to, for like unkillable options, if you don't have someone like a Fayne, can definitely slot in. And also because she's Force Affinity in some of those Heiress teams, you can use her as your Force DPS, right? If you don't have other options. So for those like those Spirit Affinities or whatever that may be. So yeah, a very good one for you guys just to pay note to. Don't sleep on Suiren. She's a really good one. Next up we've got Klodd Beastfeeder from the Ogrin tribes. And basically what he comes down to is the A1 skill, because he is one of those red or epic champions that can place a decreased crit rate to alleviate the bad crits over the course of a battle. Especially if you go into some astronomical turn counts, he's going to be that one to keep it on an even playing field for you, coinciding with an increased accuracy and an increased speed on a 3-turn cooldown to enable some of those 2-to-1 compositions for you, whilst he also has a shield buff equal to 20% of this champion's max HP. His passive, really cool as well. He was the ally with the lowest HP by 10% at the start of this champion's turn. But, like, when I first seen this champion, I'm not going to lie to you guys, I thought he was absolute garbage. Since then, he's up there, man. He enables so many cool teams for those traditional comps. Like, even for, like, those, even unkillable, right? If you just need an increased speed, I can't see why you couldn't just implement it. I've not tried it personally, but mainly for like traditional comps is kind of where I see the true value from someone like a Klodd Beastfeeder, because it's all about keeping you alive for the longest periods of time. From the dwarfs, we've got Rugnor Goldgleam from the Void Affinity. And I've actually never used this champion, but definitely fully aware of this champion's capabilities. Now, with the Gleam of Avarice, he places an increased attack on himself, so a self-amplification. He's not relying on other champions to do this for him. And then he will attack one enemy whilst also placing a weaken and also a chance of placing a decreased defense after before attacking as well. So it's actually like decreased defense and weaken and self-amplification is a very strong skill. Granted, it is on a 4-turn cooldown, so it's something to note. But with the Dire Grudge passive, he kind of alleviates some of that for you, because he decreases the cooldown of this champion's Gleam of Avarice skill, which is the one that we just spoke about, guys, by 1 turn every single time that this champion loses 15% more HP. The HP loss is accumulated and tracked over multiple turn attacks or hits and is not affected by healing or other HP increases. So, you know, there's going to be some forms of kind of decreasing those durations for you, effectively making this a 3-turn cooldown. He's also got a leech on the A1 to allow you to heal, and an A2 that I would consider turning off personally, because he sacrifices HP and I wouldn't personally want to be dealing with that. And also filling the turn meters, and it just makes it so quirky. But purely for this is A3, A1, passive, phenomenal champion, straight out of the packet, a very cool one for your guys' accounts. Next up, we've got Grizzled Jarl. Oh, Dwarf State today. Hey. Now, he's got a heal reduction A1. You know, don't really want to use that. But also, increased defense and block debuffs on a 3-turn cooldown. The block debuffs is for a 1-turn duration less than the increased defense, so you would want to consider bringing in a buff extender such as the Godseeker and Ares. Also places a decreased attack and destroys each enemy's max HP by 30% of the damage inflicted, which you might want to consider for the Scarab King boss to mitigate the boss's shield elsewhere. But decreased attack, block debuffs, increased defense, simple but effective, and is definitely used in so many teams throughout progression. Next up, Demon Spawn, we got Nazana. I know that a bunch of people aren't really using her, or maybe they are and I'm just unaware. Let's see the reviews real quick. Pretty good reviews. Pretty good reviews. Now, for the longest time ever, I'll walk you back in time, right? I thought everything was 4-turn cooldowns with this chick. Not gonna lie. Until recently, I actually realized, oh, it's all 3 turns. This kind of changes everything and my whole perspective on this champion. Because she's got a 3-turn cooldown decrease attack. Of course, not 100%, a very similar effect to Rearguard Sergeant and Hotatsu. Maybe pairing them together could be a very good option. But the kind of unholy contract here will place a 50% ally protection buff on all allies for 2 turns, right? 3-turn cooldown, 3-turn cooldown, whilst also placing a shield buff on this champion, and the value of the shield is equal to 40% of this champion's max HP, and her base HP is relatively decent here at 21k. So not only is she protecting your champions, she's putting a shield on herself to absorb some of that damage from taking all the heat from your ally protectors, although that we would really like this on an AoE, but we can't really have everything, and that's why we've got champions such as Toragi the Frog. But she's also got a backup decreased attack for your team, and an A1 that does absolutely nothing, but it's still damage. It's still a hit, right? For like your War Master procs, and maybe building her in a toxic set could be something to consider. So I think she's a really good one, you know? Like, if I was coming throughout the game, I'm entering Brutal, I'm entering Nightmare, I'm like, my gosh, I still don't have an ally protector, and I pulled a Nazana, I would be considering it, guys. Honestly, I would be. Like, even if you could just get away with just this, 3 books, 3 turn cooldown, you'd be good to go, man. You'd be good to go. Alright, so next up here, we got Sepulcher Sentinel. I'm taking me back in time as well. Do you know what, guys? Let me know in the comment section below if anyone has made it this far into the video. We're actually pretty steep in so far. We've got a few more champions to get through. How many of you was around for my Sepulcher Sentinel video back, like, nearly 3 years ago now? 2.5 years. Like, it'd be pretty cool to know some of the who's OGs of the channel. But basically, she's got decreased attack A1. Cool. Increased defense and block debuffs on a 4-turn cooldown. Really nice. Can be speed tuned in a vast majority of compositions. And also there's Untouched by Death passive, which has a 25% chance of completely blocking incoming damage when an ally is attacked. Will be a 50% chance once you book this champion up. And this will occur once per turn and will only do block damage for the target ally if multiple allies are attacked at the same time. So when you're thinking about those AoE slams or, you know, protecting your Skullcrusher or, you know, whoever that may be, this can really be clutch, right? Especially paired with someone like a Sandlash Survivor who's got an extra safety feature for you. It's like you're getting protected from Sandlash on those bad situations. You're then getting protected by this as well on those single allies. And over the course of a battle can really be clutch for your teams with defense in all battles by 25%. So, you know, really cool one for your accounts, guys. I don't think she's used as much nowadays. I feel like there's lots more options in the game, but definitely can fulfill the roles if you need to become affinity friendly in the Demon Lord. One that might actually come as a surprise to you guys, and I feel like he's one of the most underrated champions in the game. Like, forget about Clan Boss for a second. This dude is phenomenal. Really, really is. Now, basically what it comes down to is he's got a Leech A1. It's going to allow you to heal by 18%, right, for all of your allies. He's got an increased attack and then fills the turn meter of all allies by 25% on a 3-turn cooldown, which can be speed tuned and is a fundamental for so many teams out there. But what really makes him unique as well is he can remove all debuffs from all allies, then heals them by 25% and places a continuous heal buff on the allies that have a debuff removed. Like, this is a phenomenal skill for everywhere in the game, right? And he also has an attack in all battles by 25% if you want to use this as an Arbiter substitute for someone like Bobble the Dreadhorn for the one-shot strategies. So I'm a big fan of Runekeeper, a part of some niche teams out there. Definitely one that makes my list, but it's just depends on the kind of player you are, more of like an endgame scenario, I would say. Next up, starts with a T, ends with an L, Mr. Tayrel, one of my OGs. And I remember back in the day when I was pulling my Sacred Shards, you know, when we used to get them once a month, and now we just get no 5-star chickens and no shards. I'm reminiscing, I'm sad. Basically, he's got a decreased attack and a decreased defense. Not really much more to write home about, right? But he does place 2 fundamental things for you and very consistently. I do wish that he gets a bit of a buff. I would like this to be taken down to a 3-turn cooldown on the Singing Steel. But overall can still be very valuable for your team with this defensive aura. Also, we've got Doompriest from the Knights Revenant. Where are you, Miss Doompriest? No, Rector Draft. We're not looking for Rector Draft. Although she can be pretty decent with the heals, bit of revives. Not my cup of tea, if I'm honest. Won't make my top 30 list. But Doompriest is a great champion purely down to a passive with the bolster because heals all allies by 7.5% of the HP and removes a random debuff at the start of this champion's turn. Now, this keeps loads of teams affinity friendly, allows you to counter decreased speeds, the decreased attacks, the decreased accuracies, the stuns, you name it. If she's the fastest, cycled in the right speed tunes, she slots in with this passive, and this gives you an easy day to build your teams. Also an increased attack as well to amplify your damage, so not completely useless, and it's definitely one to watch out for, guys. Next up, we've got, we're going to be moving into the more unkillable options, but there's just one more here that I think I could maybe consider. Thylessia, she's got a decreased defense, she increased the duration of all debuffs, and the debuff spread is kind of useless. And also, when attacking enemies under decreased defense, has a chance of placing a hex. So maybe paired with like some of those, I'm trying to think of like those Missionarchy compositions, or just champions that rely on the hex in a sense, like a Takata, like we mentioned earlier. I feel like she can slot into some teams and put in some work, and she's a pretty good damage dealer. Maybe one for me to consider, you know? Kind of turn this into a top 40 video now. Next up, we've got the Mither from the Dwarfs. We're going to go back, we're going into the unkillable kind of stuff now, guys. You know, left it towards the end because they kind of, everybody knows about these. Dimifer, Channel the Bloodline, block damage, continuous heals, extensions of buffs, very similar to like the God-Seeking Ares and stuff, like we mentioned prior, and also heals all allies as well. So increase the duration of all ally buffs by 1 turn, then decreases them, and also an A1 as well, with some decent damage. And she enables so many teams, the Myth Air, the Air Food, Myth Food, I don't know, there's so many names for these compositions, she's basically a part of them, and I currently use her as well, so a very good unkillable option. Next up, we got Man-Eater. Obviously, the infamous Ancient Blood places the unkillable buff and a block debuffs on all allies for 2 turns, and the damage received is equal to 5% for each ally alive. Attacks one enemy, pretty decent for damage, and also has a full depletion of turn meter for elsewhere, if you need it for like the finite progression, Dark Fate, or whatever that may be. And also a decreased attack A1, which we don't really need in an unkillable team, but could be something to note for elsewhere as well. But all comes down to this unkillable block debuffs, keeps you affinity friendly, so many teams out there, and you know, it's just a staple, right? That everybody, when you come into this game, wants Man-Eaters to create those unkillable teams, right? Next up, we got a Warcaster. Warcaster from, is it from the Bannerlords? Bannerlords? Yeah, there he is. Now, he's very cool to kind of play the role as a complement to those block damage teams, whether that be like a Helicath, a Rushguard the Tower, or maybe some epic trunk card teams as well. Probably could come into effect. He basically places a block damage buff on all allies for 1 turn, and if you've got like a 2-turn duration from your other champion, and you're doing kind of like a budget scenario, you want the stun turn covered, the kind of Warcaster comes in and fulfills that role for you, right? So that's basically what he would be used as like the complement to those block damage teams throughout progression. So next up here, we're going to be going into the Sacred Order faction for Deacon Armstrong, and he's a phenomenal champ, right? I'm pretty sure that many of you guys can resonate with this one, because he's got a leech on the A1, a decreased defense on the A2, the time compression fills the turn meters of all allies by 15% and grants an extra turn, also with the speed aura by 19% in all battles. And I've definitely seen him using unkillable teams, traditional style teams, and he's definitely very, very good for some niche teams out there. So Deacon Armstrong definitely on the list. And then last but not least, we're going to be going into the Undead Hordes faction for Lord Anax. Now, for a very similar reason to Fayne, right? We have got a Weaken coming out, very strong. We've got a decreased accuracy, and a poison that lasts for 3 turns off each hit with a 2-time placement, which is on a 3-turn cooldown. And this champion actually hits very hard with his damage output. And he's also got a decreased defense coming out from the A1. You know, he's kind of covering all of the bases, poisons, weaken, and drop defense, all for 1 champion's kit. Also has a passive effect, places an increased defense on himself when he drops below 75%, and an increased attack on this champion when he drops below 50%, and grants an extra turn when his champion drops below 10%. So you do want to be a little bit wary of this 10% right in those specific compositions, but in the grand scheme of things, the increased attack can be very helpful in those traditional style compositions. But yeah, on that note, guys, that's going to be all for today's video. Hope you guys did enjoy it. If you did, be sure to hit that like, subscribe button. I would appreciate that highly, as we are on road to 30,000 subscribers, thanks to the support of you guys. And yeah, let me know what kind of champions that you guys kind of maybe got surprised from today. Is there ones that was in the vault for you and that you're considering taking them out and implementing them into your teams to drastically change your comps? Or is it an ally protector, an unkillable option, a decreased attack option, and just overall champions that you kind of thought would fit your teams perfectly? Have an amazing rest of your weekend, guys. Hope you have a great one, and I'll catch you all in a video soon. Peace.